for. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another webinar sponsored by Drake WorkWise and the Drake Wellness Hub. I'm Kevin Bowers. I'm the head of clinical services and principal psychologist at Drake WorkWise, and I oversee the EAP services and wellbeing initiatives for our valued clients. Now, before I start the webinar, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather here today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. Also, just some housekeeping to start off with. Please make sure that you're on mute throughout. And if you have any questions, please add them to the chat function throughout the webinar so we can respond to them at the end. The purpose of today's webinar is to arm you with the awareness and skills to regain your focus after experiencing a setback in the path towards your goal. Whether it be a personal or work-related goal, I will guide you through some strategies to assist with your performance and your achievement of your goals. Well, let's start off with a very valuable video just to warm you up.
My life and my career was not a smooth, easy road. I had a lot of ups and downs. I went through a lot of tough times.
After 2012, I fell into a major state of depression. That was probably the hardest fall for me. I didn't want to be in the sport anymore. I didn't want to be alive anymore. I just never forget just being in my bedroom at home and literally sitting in there for 3 to 5 days and just not wanting to be alive.
I've never been somebody who's given up, and I didn't want to give up in that moment. So for me, I thought there was a different road that I could go down. I went 5 or 6 straight years without missing a single day. Doesn't matter a holiday, a birthday, if I'm sick, this or that, it doesn't matter. I wanted to make that sacrifice to do something nobody else has ever done. So for me to go 5 or 6 straight years, that meant I had 52 extra days a year. But also in the sport of swimming, if you take 1 day off, it takes you 2 days to get back to where you were. As where I'm getting 6 years straight. So I'm getting that much more ahead of them. I'm getting that much more work. I'm in that much better shape. I wasn't racing anybody else. I was racing myself. I didn't care what anybody else did. If I went the times that I had on my goal sheet, I knew there was not another soul on that planet that could have done the times that I had written down. There were days where I didn't want to get out of bed. There were days where I'm sore, I can't move, I don't want to swim, I'm tired, I don't feel well, this, that, the other. I'm sure we all have days like that. If you really want something, and if you care about something that much, it doesn't matter if you're not super successful the first time. Because if it's something that you're truly passionate about, you're going to get up and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It doesn't matter how hard it is to get there. If you really want something, there shouldn't be a damn thing in this world that should stand in front of you and accomplishing that goal. And that's the bottom line. Because our mind, if we put our mind to something, we can accomplish truly everything.
All right, so Michael Phelps, for that particular event, he had a setback, and as we learned before, he has endured, and he's achieved a lot despite some of those setbacks. All right, let's move on to the Australian cricket team. That this is one example of having a setback in their endeavour to achieve the best that they can.
I remember getting back to my hotel room. I didn't know what to do, and I just felt like a physical, emotional wreck. I was on FaceTime to my wife, and she goes, "What's that in your hand?" I said, "Oh, it's a scotch." She goes, "What?" She goes, "Scotch? You don't drink scotch?" I go, "I do tonight, baby." I was like, I felt sick then. I was just sitting in my room by myself, and I'm just going, "Oh, I'll go to sleep." Did not sleep. And that's when I realised we've got to do something about it. I texted Dean Hills. I said, "Mate, can you set up the last partnership between Leach and Stokes in the boardroom?" He goes, "Yeah, I can do that." Go to sleep, boys, please. Go to sleep. Truth is, this could easily break us. That's what everyone else, the whole rest of the world will be saying, but it's our choice. So what we're going to do, we're going to watch what happened yesterday and before us for no other reason except we're going to learn. It's going to give us the shits watching it, but we're going to learn from it. We're going to shake ourselves off, and we're going to get up to be ready for the next test match.
I wasn't overly impressed with going there, re-watching that last 15 overs or what it was. I already did that in my head over and over and over. I didn't need to do it again.
Just roll it, Dino, please, mate.
Sure. 62 runs away, England.
That is an unbelievable shot from Ben Stokes. No, pitched outside leg.
Was that the referral?
Got a review, they're going to use the review.
No way in the world could it be out.
Obviously, but opportunity. Sort of hoping.
1 to tie, 2 to win. No sleep, they run, non-strikers in, could be a run out. Oh, he's fumbled! Lyon has fumbled. Cut away for 4. The Ashes well and truly alive because of one cricketer.
Hard to watch, but it is what it is. The only thing I will say, there was an opportunity, in my opinion, with 71 to go, last ball of the over. If we're reading the play, there is no way there can be a run there. We've got 6 balls at Leach, right? I've got to squeeze in on them. We can't give an easy run like that.
He wanted to sweep from wide out of rough. We thought it was actually a chance to get him out.
Were our plans clear enough to Stokes, do you reckon?
We know we could have changed the fields. We could have bowled more bounces. We had blokes coming on saying bowl slow balls. Hoff bowled him 3 slow balls, he hit for 3 sixes. So 100% we can do things slightly differently. We didn't panic. We didn't shit ourselves. We tried our best. We had a crack. The bloke had a day out. Yeah, absolutely. I've been awake all night. I would have changed the field 100 times. I think we all would have.
Yeah.
But we didn't.
The question is, when we're under that pressure, we know that. Were we really clear what the plan was?
The plans were clear. Panic can't start the over. Said, let's try some slow balls, and tried to go wide. Probably wasn't wide enough on occasions, and I tried the Yorker, just missed.
So he's faced 220 balls by now, and we've got Leach who's come in. You want Paddo to have 6 balls at Leach, surely. The opportunity missed there is that we let him have a single.
Yep.
That's just intent, that's just game awareness, which we all talk about.
I was sort of going, well, fuck, if we get 1 or 2 at Leach, I'm back and go and hit him on the toe or get some glove. But the percentage played will now be to bring the field up. Balls 5 and 6, we should have had the field up when we had 60 or 70. It's plain and simple to see now. Got it wrong.
No one wants to ever have that feeling again that you had yesterday or last night when you lied in your bed. We're going to stay together, we're going to stick together, we're going to work hard together, we're going to get ready together to be ready for Old Trafford together to win the 4th Test match. Okay? After it, Painey says to me, I found that really confronting because I like to admit that I made some mistakes. And I said, it's not a weakness, mate, that's a strength because we're all human and it's good to admit weakness or vulnerability in front of your mates because then they'll go, oh yeah, okay, we actually did make some mistakes.
Chat after a loss or something that just didn't work, and it's hard. It's hard to revisit and focus on what went wrong. But my goodness, as part of that adult learning, that experiential learning process, that reflecting on what happened in the past in a more of a constructive way, as they're doing there. I mean, that's a tense room. You can feel the low mood in that video. Done constructively, you can learn a lot from that, and that's what they were doing. They were really trying to understand what went wrong and learn from that experience so that they don't repeat those mistakes again in the future. Now let's watch another one just to really set the scene.
One of the things that we know about life is that it is always changing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes things go real well, and sometimes they don't. Now that's that thing called life. And when we begin to understand and know that, accepting that reality that we will never ever have things just on an even keel all the time, that you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. But during those down moments, that's where the growth takes place. That's where the work is. See, anybody can feel good when they have their health, their bills are paid, they have happy relationships. Anybody could be positive then. Anybody can have a larger vision then. Anybody can have faith under those kinds of circumstances. See, but the real challenge of growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down.
That's just kind of the way that life works sometimes. It's Murphy's Law. When things go wrong, they always seem to happen at once, and they just compound on top of each other. And it's pretty easy sometimes to feel beaten when you're faced with all those issues and all those problems, and they all hit you at the same time. But that doesn't mean give up. In fact, it means the opposite. It means it's time for you to fight harder, to dig in. It means it's time for you to go on the war path.
Going to the gym, it's not about like checking the box, paid my dues today. I go in there and I find it's self-discovery. It's like there's something about that 8th rep when you can't do it, of who you are. When you're pushing it, trying to get it up, and do we just quit? Do we just rack it? Or do we rack it, drop the weight, and keep going for the burn? Or do we get someone to spot us? Who are we in that adversity? Do we push past it? Do we try to get more out of it, or do we settle? Do we say words like good enough? And if you do say good enough, you're in trouble because you don't know if you have enough.
You see, all of us in life encounter these VN moments, these hard, stress-filled, anxiety-filled moments that unexpectedly hit us. And the thing is that's common for all of us, when these ambushes occur, we all get stuck on a central point. In special operations lingo, we call it the X. And the X is that central point of attack. It is the point of incident. It's the point of the VN moments. And for most of us, we focus on the pain. We focus on the misery. We focus on that stress. And we get stuck, failing to realize one of the greatest gifts you have when life ambushes come, that it can become a new beginning.
All right, so we're setting the scene with some powerful videos, of elite athletes or sporting teams, and one inspirational one, just that one, really setting the scene that we all experience that setbacks, and we grow so much from these experiences. As adults, we're able to remember what happened and then grow and add to our toolbox of skills and strategies to set us up better for the future, and really enhance our stoicism and resilience to really push through some of the future challenges that we're inevitable to face. That is life, as the video was saying. It's life to experience our setbacks and challenges. So, my goodness, what a great start to set the scene. Now we're going to cover off on what are some of the unhelpful responses that people commonly experience in the face of a setback. And so stress tends to be triggered when we feel like we don't have time or resources to meet the demands placed on us. It's important to note that the fight or flight response can be activated by perceived threat, not just the real threat. And we can become stressed by thinking and worrying, even if there isn't that physical or objective threat in front of us. And for example, if you're unable to finish a major assignment or project on time, your fight or flight response will be activated because it's important to you to achieve this goal. How we think and behave impacts on how we feel. And so a model of stress has 4 components. And the first one is thoughts. So what you think about the situation and your self-talk has a real influence on how you feel and how you behave. There are feelings and emotions associated with a stress reaction. You can feel tense or irritable, anxious or hopeless. There's also the physical element to a stress response. What you physically feel in your body, and it could be your racing heart, or you could have physical reactions like a headache or physical pain or digestive problems. It is the body reacting to that stress response, the flight or fight response to a perceived threat. And then finally, the final quadrant is the behaviors. What you do or what you don't do. And that could be things like, your sleep. It could be disrupted. You could be procrastinating. You could have difficulties concentrating. You might be avoiding things like exercise that you normally do. Maybe crashing out in front of the TV because you're just absolutely exhausted or feeling as though you just can't carry on. So if a person starts to worry that their life is out of control, they might feel stressed and irritable, and starts to maybe get some physical signs of stress like headaches. In response, they either overwork or procrastinate, which triggers more stress related to thoughts, resulting to a vicious cycle. It goes on and on. It goes around. The more worrying thoughts you have, then the more stress reactions in the other quadrants come about. Now, how do we refocus? Now, we've just briefly covered off on a stress response. Now, how do we refocus? How do we really realign all our energy towards achieving that particular goal that we feel as though, gosh, this is a setback or this is another setback? How do we get back on track? So let's focus on 3 key strategies: a positive attitude, a breathing exercise, and enhancing our attentional control abilities. These 3 can really enhance our performance and really regulate the stress response to perhaps enhance our energy and refocus it on the task at hand. So firstly, how do we refocus after setback? Well, positive attitude. Research has found that a reason why individuals thrive and grow from failure or a setback, and others do not, is because how they appraise their experience. According to the appraisal theory, an individual is likely to have a negative emotional reaction to a setback if they appraise it as stressful and harmful. In contrast, a setback interpreted as not threatening or a positive experience is likely to result in a positive or neutral emotional reaction. So these interpretations are mediated by how strong personal goals and self-identity are attached to the setback. The stronger the attachment, the stronger the emotional reaction. Experience plays a large part in the appraisal of stressful events and emotional reactions to setbacks. So research has found that individuals who experience multiple setbacks are psychologically stronger and have more positive attitude towards a setback. Now, this could be due to positive appraisals of their response and recovery from past setbacks and perception of their ability to cope with future setbacks. Now, psychologically strong individuals have psychological capital, which includes hope, optimism, self-efficacy, and resilience. Now, hope is the perception that one's goal can be met. Optimism is a positive explanatory style about succeeding in the future. Self-efficacy is an individual's belief in their ability to achieve a specific outcome. And resilience is the ability to bounce back to normal functioning after experiencing hardship or failure. So psychological capital can be developed by persevering through challenges and learning from those experiences. A business can capitalize on individual psychological capital by fostering an environment where experienced and psychologically robust employees openly discuss their setbacks or failures and mentor less experienced individuals through challenging experiences. And this psychological capital could assist with increasing the stress management in individuals, which could then result in better performance and better decision making. So there's a lot to say about a team pulling together and those who have experienced setbacks to assist others feeling as though it's not the end of the world when they do have their own setback, and to normalize it and assist in them growing from that experience. So that's positive attitude. Now, how do we refocus after a setback? Well, maybe in the immediate term, we need to regulate our stress response. And one very helpful strategy is breathing. Now, breathing is evidence-based, it's self-administered, it's non-pharmacological, it's non-invasive, it's cost-effective and portable strategy to manage stress associated with a setback. When we are stressed or anxious or our impulsive brain takes over and we operate on a flight or fight response. Our stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline kick in, and resources are focused on our heart, our lungs, legs, arms, and our physical preparation in response to a physical threat. And this is the fight or fight response that I mentioned before. Now, this is great when we are under threat or playing a high intensity competitive sport. And I remember as an athlete, I used to really fire up before the start of my race. And my race was only 200 meters. It was a really quick one, but I had to be fired up. And activating that flight or fight response was the key to really getting into that mental and physical state. However, it's not necessarily a helpful strategy when we're trying to interact in the world around us and focus on a task at hand, especially when it requires a lot of cognitive attention. Now, our flight or fight response encourages us to breathe into our chest, which influences how much blood is carried to our brain and muscles, and it keeps our stress levels like cortisone and hormone levels elevated. When we resort to chest breathing over time, it becomes a habit, and our cortisol levels remain high. As a result, our sleep quality reduces over time, and we can find it harder to problem solve or prioritize our time, which further promotes stress. I mean, the more you get flustered, the more stressed you become. I'm sure we've experienced that before. And so we can reduce our cortisol release purely by breathing through our diaphragm. So let's watch this next video and really focus on how you would breathe from your diaphragm and less from your chest. And I want you to give this a practice. And this is something that you can or look up online. It's the 4-4-8 breath. Whatever your goal, controlling your breath will help you find center and clarify your thinking. Now, this technique is about allowing your mind to focus on your breath as you draw air in and slowly out. So as you become more aware of the steadiness of your breath, you begin to create a rhythm by breathing through your nose to count to 4, pausing for a count of 4, and then slowly releasing the breath out for a count of 8. Now, this breathing technique may not feel natural at first because you have to hold your breath, and we don't normally hold our breath. So it might feel forced to start off with, but if you count 4 and then 4 and then 8, you will start to get used to it. However, if it's too difficult, then you can change it to 3 seconds, 3 seconds, and then 6 seconds. The process may feel foreign because a lot of people think that controlling your breath, holding your breath, is unnatural. When we breathe, we tend to take for granted. And when we're struggling to breathe, we're really conscious of it. But when you focus on your breath, you'll find that your rhythm, or you'll find a rhythm if you just relax and try not to force the control. Just go with it and accept it, and if you feel quite uncomfortable with it, then you can recommence it another time. So this exercise is designed to help you relax and deepen your concentration. When you are tense or feeling stressed, this exercise will help you release your tension so that you can accomplish whatever you're attempting. And meditation, controlling your anger or finding calmness is just one of the benefits of breathing. And it's funny, when I was a junior psychologist, I was recommended to implement controlled breathing into the techniques that I taught to my clients. And I thought, breathing, it's too simple. But over the years, I've not only found in practice with clients that breathing is such an effective strategy to reduce stress. But there's a lot of research, a lot of growing research that indicates that it's not only a fantastic strategy that is accessible to us on a day-to-day basis to manage our own stress, but it's been found as an effective strategy to lower the symptoms of mental disorders like anxiety and depression when they are exacerbated. So let's now focus on this breathing technique as just one technique that you can implement when you are feeling quite flustered or stressed in response to a setback. And watching the video and listening to the audio and thinking, I must breathe more into my diaphragm, which is in your belly more so than your chest when we go through this. So find a relaxed position and follow the guidance. Well, hopefully that gave you a bit of a taste of a technique that can really lower your stress hormones and regulate your stress response to a setback. So that's just one example of many techniques that you can implement, but this one we do highly recommend because it's so accessible. So how to refocus out. So this is a really interesting one. So it's enhancing attentional controllability. So, the attentional control theory suggests that worrying about something like a setback impacts our performance via its negative effect on our attentional control ability. So when our attentional system is functioning effectively, irrelevant information is filtered out so it doesn't distract us. And the task relevant information is selectively maintained and readily available in our working memory. Now, attentional control is important in our day-to-day tasks and is a key function of our working memory. So, for example, you need to pay attention. That is, you need to store relevant information in your short-term working memory when someone gives you a street direction after your navigation system or your Navman or Google Maps, whatever, fails, and you're lost in an unfamiliar suburb. So you need to retain that address or path in your working memory. Now, research has shown that worry is related to inefficient filtering of irrelevant information and reduces cognitive control, leaving fewer mental resources available for concurrent task demand. So, for instance, worrying about being lost in an unfamiliar suburb might make your brain work harder to concentrate and make it more difficult to remember the street directions. So, difficulties concentrating may also maintain worry by directing mental resources towards worrying thoughts in an attempt to manage perceived threat. And I find that in our busy lifestyles, with so many competing demands and oversaturation of stimuli, it can be difficult to concentrate and focus on the task at hand. Any negative thoughts or worries that have been contained are now drifting to the surface of the mind. The mind then dedicates energy to trying to understand or solve these problems or perceived threats, therefore leaving fewer mental resources available for performing on the task at hand. So the ability to stay focused on a task without being distracted underlies performance in a variety of contexts. For example, a racing car driver turning a corner with just inches between the vehicle and the bollard requires great focus on the position of the vehicle on the track and other cars. So training one's ability to stay on task has been found to enhance attentional control ability. So how to enhance our focus and attention? Well, mindfulness is a meditative technique that has recently received a lot of attention in the scientific community. Mindfulness-based training has been found to enhance attentional abilities in adults, children, and adolescents. So it's quite applicable across many age groups. So mindfulness is a state of mind achieved by focusing our attention on the present moment, while calmly and objectively accepting our feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. Now we'll try a mindfulness exercise together. So let's follow this video, and if you've tried mindfulness leaves on the stream, then this will be familiar with you. If you haven't, then let's give it a shot.
Exercise 3. Leaves on a stream. The idea behind this exercise is to simply notice your thoughts coming and going without getting caught with them, without getting into a conversation with them, not trying to control them, not getting tangled up with them, just noticing them and then letting them go. When you are ready, begin. Sit comfortably in your chair, with your feet on the ground if you can, and your back straight, but not too straight, sitting against the chair. If you wish, close your eyes or have a heavy-lidded gaze, maybe looking at one spot on the ground. Now imagine you are sitting on the bank of a stream and that there are leaves flowing past. The stream and the leaves can look any way you like to imagine. Notice a thought that comes into your mind and imagine placing it on a leaf and letting it flow on. Notice each thought. Imagine placing it on a leaf and let it float on. If your mind begins to wander, just notice that. And return your focus to noticing the thoughts that come to mind. And imagine putting them on a leaf and let them float on. If your thoughts stop, just imagine watching the stream until the next one comes along.
All right, so let's finish that exercise and reorientate ourselves to the screen as we're coming to the close of the primary component of the webinar before our Q&A session. I want to pose a question to you that is, what are 2 things that you've learned today that you're going to implement straight away? And if you have any questions, now's the time to raise it, perhaps put it into that chat function, and during our Q&A section, we'll respond to them. So, I would like to hand over to Andy, who is our MC for our Q&A session.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Kevin. Really insightful presentation. Okay, let's have a look here. I'm just going to pull up the chat. Okay, so last chance, if anybody wanted to ask any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll take it through. Alternatively, we did have some predefined scenarios that I thought would work really well, because it'll, in addition to Kev's presentation, I think it'll help us contextualize it as well using real examples. So what I'd like to do is, if there's no questions, I'd like to pose a couple of scenarios through and have Kevin answer those. So Kevin, just when you're ready, I'll start with the first one.
No worries, go for it.
Okay, so I want you to imagine a scenario where there's 2 colleagues that have been working tirelessly on a project for 8 months. Deadline passes, and unfortunately, they're not able to complete the project within the required time frame. Now, due to this, one of the employees turns around and, due to the overwhelming stress, decides that ultimately they're resigning, leaving that one colleague alone with the increased workload. So Kevin, in this scenario, what strategies would you recommend to that lone employee to more or less refocus on the goal and moving forward to prevent stress?
Yeah, no, thanks, Andy. And the scenario is probably not uncommon, where someone within a work environment becomes overwhelmed by the stress that they have to take some time off, or in this case, they leave, and I can imagine the amount of stress that both people are experiencing in that case, and the person leaving might need to attend to their own self-care. The person left, my goodness, they have to refocus on that particular project and by themselves. So both people experience a lot of stress. And so there's a great importance on self-care in order to enhance and maintain the mental capacity required to really dedicate to the project. So to start off with, I would recommend that person who's left as the sole person working on this project to focus on the basic needs. And with that stress response, the flight or fight reaction to the stress, they need to make sure that their sleep is in track, making sure that they've got a sleep routine, a good sleep hygiene, good optimal environment to make sure that they're getting quality sleep. Diet's also a basic need that they need to attend to. Things like complex carbohydrates to sustain their efforts and energy throughout the day. But also exercise is so important as a basic need. So implement that into their regular schedule on a daily basis, whether it be just a gentle walk or a couple push-ups or some squats here and there, just to get that blood flowing, because we need to look after our mental health and our physical health at the same time. But also another thing that I would recommend to the person who's staying on this project to really refocus is attending to their emotional needs too. And this includes taking time out from making decisions. I mean, my goodness, our prefrontal lobe is the area that's dedicated to making decisions, and we need to make sure that has a rest. And like a muscle, it fatigues when it's overused. So we need to give it a break from making decisions. And perhaps things like meditation or going for a walk, a gentle walk without any distractions or stimuli can really help in refreshing that part of the brain. So that's what I would recommend for that person who's continuing on that project, to really refocus and dedicate or redirect their energy towards achieving that goal.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Kev. I've got another one. This resonates with me, so chances are it probably resonates with a few of you as well. So we talk about mental health, but let's talk about physical health for a moment. So personally, I found it difficult to adjust from having ease of access to a local gym in a scenario where I've kind of had to take it upon myself to ensure that I'm still getting my weekly physical exercise in. So just from your perspective, I wanted to hear, for somebody that's perhaps in a similar situation like me, just struggling to take that first step, what kind of methods would you suggest just to get them on the way?
Yeah, no, I can imagine during the lockdown and the pandemic in particular, it would have been difficult for many people to maintain the fitness levels. And I was one person that also couldn't go to the gym, Andy, and I'm a bit of a fitness fanatic. So I felt as though, gosh, how am I going to do this? And I not only do I want to validate the challenges, but also setting goals or re-establishing goals is one strategy that I would recommend. So take small steps and break down your goals into achievable chunks is what I would recommend. And using the SMART principle to goal setting is a good guide. So if you haven't used that before, the SMART principle stands for S, specific. And I'll give an example. Maybe specific number of push-ups, like 20. And the M stands for measurable. So 20 is a good number. You can measure it. A stands for achievable. So I already achieved 10. So maybe another 10 is quite achievable over time. And then the R is realistic. So I've achieved 25 in the past. So maybe 20 is realistic. And then T stands for time orientated. So maybe 4 weeks is a good time to achieve this goal of 10 more push-ups and perhaps increase the number of maximum push-ups by 3 each week. So my point being, Andy, is goal setting using a nice framework or guide like the SMART principle is one way to really help refocus on that goal, fitness goal that you may have had a setback during the lockdown.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Kev. Final scenario. So this one I wanted to put through again, obviously to yourself. Nobody's immune to setbacks, and obviously we've all got our own ways of dealing with life's challenges. So this scenario, I want you all to imagine specifically an individual who's worked countless hours of overtime. They've taken on every task imaginable in the hopes of being promoted for a more senior position. Now, after finding out that they weren't successful, immediately they felt unmotivated towards work, and this increased the absenteeism, decreased their productivity, and they also found themselves skipping work meetings. So in a scenario like this, Kev, what would you suggest this individual to kind of do to refocus their efforts and keep their eyes on the prize moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I want to validate the difficulties in that situation. It's hard to refocus on a goal that you've been working so hard to achieve, but failed to attain it in the first time. And I say first time because setbacks are a normal process of achieving a big goal, and we do experience setbacks, and that's part of life, as in one of the first videos that we saw. So I want to validate that as a possibility, is that the path or the road towards the achievement of a big goal may be riddled with setbacks. And this particular scenario, perhaps this person experienced their first setback. So it's important to take a break, give your mind some rest to reset. Like I said before, the prefrontal lobe is that area that we make decisions in, and like a muscle, we need to rest it so it feels refreshed for the next stage and for making more decisions. And then review your priorities and values. And that may include the goals, the SMART goals that you've got to attain that ultimate achievement, and perhaps you need to adjust those steps and maybe ask for feedback from that person of why you weren't selected in order to tailor your path and your goals towards that ultimate objective. Thanks, Andy.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Kevin. So just before we wrap up, I just wanted to make some final remarks. Unless there's any other questions anybody else wanted to put forth, now's definitely the time. But for the most part, if that's not the case, so today's webinar is just an example of the great initiatives available to you through Drake WorkWise. So our programs are fully bespoke and they're tailored towards organizational needs from a budgeting perspective or any personal requirements. So if you're interested in seeing how we can assist your organization, next week you'll actually receive an email. It will just be a copy of the webinar. So please feel free to pass it on to anybody who unfortunately didn't have a chance to attend that may find some value from it. There'll also be a short survey in there. any and all feedback is really appreciated. But for the most part, all the attendees, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Good morning, good afternoon, goodbye.